You are sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 12th floor. The cold fluorescent lights reflect off the sleek table. The HR director slides a piece of paper toward you. It is your year-end performance review. In this office, even though no one says it out loud, everyone secretly knows exactly how much everyone else makes. And on that transparent corporate ladder, you are the one falling the furthest behind. 3 years have passed, and your on-paper salary has barely moved. The collar of the dress shirt you are wearing is slightly frayed. The car you parked in the basement this morning is the oldest one in the company lot. Standing right outside the glass door is your cubicle mate, casually raising his wrist to check the time on a luxury watch he just bought with his quarterly bonus. From the outside looking in, your paycheck paints a picture of absolute stagnation. But there is a truth existing right in this room that the piece of paper cannot capture. This morning, just 30 minutes before you swiped your security badge, a silent notification popped up on your phone. It was a dividend payout from an index fund and the rental cash flow from a small apartment, deposited into a completely separate automated account. The passive income from that single morning alone was larger than the entire monthly take-home pay of the director sitting across from you. No one in this room knows that. Their eyes still hold a hint of pity for you. And that is exactly what you want. To understand why you intentionally built a facade of failure on the company payroll system, we have to rewind 7 years. You are 28 years old. You and the colleague with the expensive watch walked into this company on the exact same day. Both of you started at the exact same baseline, a highly transparent salary of $1,400 a month. A salary is a very strange thing. It is the only source of income society teaches us to be proud of. But you quickly realize that a salary is also the most naked form of wealth. It is a straight line that everyone can see. Your boss sees it and uses it to justify giving you more work. The tax agency sees it and takes a massive cut before it ever reaches your hands. And everyone around you sees it to automatically calculate your social worth. Your colleague looked at that straight line and decided he needed to climb it as fast as possible. He took on every extra project, stayed at the office until 9 every night, and sacrificed his weekends in exchange for new titles. Within 3 years, he successfully pushed his salary up to $4,000 a month. Everyone praised him as the textbook example of success. But as you quietly watched, you saw a machine silently draining him. Every time his salary bumped up a tier, his income tax jumped into a new progressive bracket. Worse, the invisible pressure of that managerial title forced him to upgrade his entire lifestyle. He could not drive a beat-up car to meet major clients. He could not live in a cramped apartment while holding the title of department head. $4,000 a month sounds like a lot, but it was immediately shredded by a financed luxury car payment, premium rent, and expensive dinners required to maintain his new social circle. His income was incredibly high, but it was incredibly fragile. It depended 100% on him showing up to this building every single day, keeping his superiors happy, and never getting sick. If the company stopped signing his checks, that entire glittering life would collapse in less than 30 days. He had fallen into the high-income trap, confusing a beautiful paycheck with actual financial security. Seeing that future, you decided not to play the corporate escalation game. You turned down the promotions that required your absolute exhaustion. You accepted leaving the office at exactly 5:30 every afternoon, enduring the judgmental stares of your peers. You kept your modest salary right where it was. But you were not lazy. You were simply funneling all your energy and focus into a completely different place. You realized that true power does not lie in the amount of money the company wires you every month. It lies in the money you can keep, compound, and hide. You started building a machine that no one in the company could see and no one could tax. Instead of staying late to fight for a few hundred extra dollars that the government would heavily tax, you went home. You kept your expenses exactly where they were when you first started. By maintaining a lower-tier lifestyle while slightly increasing your baseline income over the years, you created a massive gap between what you earned and what you spent. A 60% savings rate. But you did not just leave that money in a checking account where inflation could slowly eat it alive. You started building your financial maze. You mastered the art of layering. You took that monthly surplus and quietly bought into broad market index funds. Every time a dividend was paid out, you did not use it to buy a new watch or a designer suit. You set up a dividend reinvestment plan. The system automatically used that cash to buy more shares, completely bypassing your personal checking account. The money never touched your hands. It went straight back into the machine to work. A few years later, you used the compounded capital to buy a modest rental property on the outskirts of the city. You did not manage it yourself. You hired a property manager, effectively putting another layer between you and your asset. The tenant paid rent, the manager took a cut, and the rest flowed into a dedicated business account. That account paid the mortgage, and whatever was left was immediately swept back into your index funds. You created a closed-loop system. Money was breeding money in the dark, entirely disconnected from the corporate payroll system. By the time you turned 32, your investment portfolio crossed the $150,000 mark. Yet, on the HR department's spreadsheet, your salary was still hovering just around $2,000. You looked completely unremarkable, and that is exactly when the psychological torture of the lonely middle began. Building quiet wealth is not just about financial discipline. It is a grueling psychological test. Your colleague, now a senior manager, had just closed on a massive suburban home. He bought his wife a new luxury SUV. He posted photos of premium airport lounges and fine dining experiences. Every time you walked into the break room, people were talking about his latest acquisition. No one was talking about your index funds, because no one could see them. Your parents started dropping subtle hints, asking if you were doing okay at work, worried that you were falling behind your peers. Your friends looked at your 5-year-old phone and your worn-out sneakers with genuine sympathy. There were nights when you sat in your cramped, outdated apartment staring at the glowing numbers on your brokerage app, feeling a crushing sense of isolation. You had $150,000 in liquid assets. You could walk into a dealership tomorrow and buy his exact same luxury watch, his exact same car in cash without even flinching. The temptation to hit the sell button, to liquidate just a fraction of your portfolio to prove to everyone that you were not a failure, was almost unbearable. But you closed the laptop, you chose the silence, you accepted the pity. You decided to let the maze keep growing in the dark, and it was a good thing you did, because the ultimate stress test was about to hit, and it was going to expose the terrifying fragility of the transparent paycheck. The year you turned 35, the market shifted. It was not a sudden dramatic crash, but a slow, suffocating tightening of the economy. Revenue dropped, clients pulled their budgets, and suddenly the company announced a massive internal restructuring. The atmosphere in the office turned toxic overnight. People were whispering in the hallways, terrified of losing their primary source of survival. Management locked themselves in that exact same glass-walled conference room for days, projecting a massive spreadsheet onto the screen. They were not looking at who was working the hardest. They were looking at who was costing them the most. This is the hidden danger of the transparent paycheck that nobody warns you about. When times are good, a high salary is a badge of honor. When times are bad, a high salary is a giant red target on your back. Your colleague, the one with the luxury SUV and the premium mortgage, was one of the highest paid middle managers in the department. He was expensive, and in a corporate spreadsheet designed to cut costs, expensive means expendable. On a random Tuesday morning, he was called into the glass room. 20 minutes later, he walked out with a cardboard box. Just like that, his $4,000 a month lifeline was completely severed, because his entire lifestyle was leveraged against that single transparent stream of active income. The collapse was immediate and brutal. He had no cash reserves, only high-interest credit card debt for maintaining his image. Within 2 months, the luxury SUV was quietly sold back to the dealership at a massive loss. The premium suburban home suddenly became a terrifying financial prison. The stress aged him 5 years in a matter of weeks. The man who had everything on paper suddenly had nothing in reality because he never owned his wealth. He only rented it from his employer. You, on the other hand, survived the cuts. Your modest $2,000 salary made you cheap to keep. You were financially invisible to the corporate axe. But here is the most important part of the story. Even if they had fired you that Tuesday morning, it would not have mattered. You would not have panicked. You would not have lost your home. Because while the company was busy evaluating your stagnant low-tier paycheck, your financial maze had quietly matured. Over the last 7 years, your relentless reinvesting, your rental property, and your compounding index funds had grown into a formidable machine. That closed-loop system was now generating $3,500 a month in pure passive cash flow. Your invisible portfolio income had finally surpassed your active working income. Your dividends did not care about the company's quarterly earnings. Your tenant's rent did not depend on your boss's mood. Your wealth was entirely decentralized. The economic shockwave that devastated your colleague barely registered as a ripple in your financial ecosystem. The silence and the isolation of the lonely middle had finally paid off, which brings us back to today. Right now, in this glass-walled conference room, the HR director finishes reading your mediocre performance review. She looks at you, expecting to see a desperate, compliant employee who is terrified of the current job market. Then, the department head leans forward, puts his hands on the table, and offers you a massive opportunity. They want you to step up and take over the position of your fired colleague. They offer you a new title, a 50% increase in your salary, and the unspoken expectation that you will now dedicate your evenings and weekends to saving the department. They expect you to lean in, to express deep gratitude for this lifeline, to finally join the race you've been avoiding for 7 years. You look at the piece of paper. You look at the HR director. You feel the weight of the old car key in your pocket. You think about the dividend notification that pinged on your phone just 30 minutes ago. And then you do the one thing they absolutely cannot comprehend. You smile, push the paper back across the table, and politely decline the promotion. But you do not stop there. You reach into your worn-out briefcase, pull out a simple, pre-printed piece of paper, and hand it to them. It is your letter of resignation. The silence in the room is deafening. The confusion on their faces is absolute. They cannot process how an employee with the lowest salary, wearing a frayed shirt, and driving the oldest car in the lot can afford to walk away from a paycheck during an economic downturn. They have no idea how you will survive. They do not know about the maze. They do not know that the passive income waiting for you at home is more than enough to cover your modest expenses for the rest of your life. This is the ultimate payoff of quiet wealth. It is not about buying a Lamborghini or flashing a Rolex on social media. It is about the absolute, undeniable power of choice. True wealth is the ability to look at a room full of powerful people, listen to their demands, and calmly say no. It is the freedom to buy back 100% of your time. You walk out of the conference room. You pack up your desk. You walk past the empty cubicle where your colleague used to sit. You take the elevator down to the basement, get into your old, reliable car, and start the engine. As you drive out of the dark parking garage and into the bright afternoon sun, you realize something profound. The transparent paycheck was never a measure of success. It was always a trap. The real game of wealth is played in the shadows, and you just won.